Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, welcome and congratulations to all the awardees and members of the World Habitat Awards Network. Home for Good involves the private sector stepping up to provide affordable housing to low-income people and families, embracing housing in its social function and as a human right rather than a commodity. The partnership with specialized organizations ensures that people are at the center of each step of the process.
Other gold winner from a very different place. Same time zone, I think, but I think that's about the only connection I can think. Susan Agdemill, who is the founder of Homes for Good, and I think a very different project, but of course with very similar sort of broad aims. Susan, I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about Homes for Good and what you've achieved in Scotland.
David, and thank you to World Habitat and UN Habitat for awarding us this prize. It's been an absolute honour to win the Gold Award, and 10 years on from our original idea that many thought was impossible, which is creating quality homes in the private rented sector for people who really need them the most. What I'm going to do now is just share a few slides about why and how we've created the housing portfolio that we have, what we've done this year since winning the award, the challenges that we're facing currently, and our ambitious plans for the future. So fingers crossed that my screen sharing works. I will try this just now. So as I think we all know, home is the foundation for all of our lives, and David's opening comments reflected everything that we believe in at Homes for Good. And if we look at what's happening in Glasgow, which is one of the largest cities in Scotland, you can see from the numbers there that we've got a housing problem. And there are more and more people becoming homeless. There are too many people on social housing waiting lists. And at the moment, every rental property gets 300 inquiries, which is incredible. In 2011, I decided that I wanted to make things better in the private rented sector for people who live in their homes, but also for landlords who own private property and rent it out. So I decided, first of all, to create a letting agency that was a social enterprise. But I then wanted to go one step further and make sure that people who couldn't get social housing or people who were homeless could access quality within the private rented sector. And this is what we did with our housing portfolio. I decided to go on a journey of raising investment to create a portfolio of homes for people who need them. These are the investors 10 years on that we have involved with Homes for Good. And I'm delighted that Daniel Sattar from Big Issue Invest is here to talk about our work today. And so far, this is what we've achieved, as you saw in the earlier slides. And we've only just really started. We've raised £20 million and we want to raise a further £20 million again in a much shorter time to create more homes. And just briefly, I won't go through all of the different stages, but you can see the different stages in our slide of what we do. We buy property, we renovate it, we furnish the property, we then rent the property to someone who needs a home, and we support them to live there. And I'll just show you some photographs of the difference that we make in our homes. Who are the people who live in our homes? Most of the people who live in our homes are either working on a low income or receive government support to pay their rent. And by far, in a way, most of the people who move into our homes, it's either their first home, they're young people that have maybe moved into a new home for the first time, or they have been homeless and in extreme need of somewhere to live immediately before moving into one of our properties. We work with very specialist agencies as well to ensure that people who are the absolutely most vulnerable in our community can access our homes and get specialist provision alongside that from our partners. The sorts of support that we provide are much more around reducing social isolation and helping people live well in their homes. One of our special projects, which is probably my favourite one, is the way that we work with our interior designers through our Love Home programme. And this is where we enable our existing tenants to really put their mark on their property, even if they've lived in it for a couple of years, to then make the home really feel like somewhere that they can love. So far in 2023, we've achieved a lot. We've kept going, and you can see here some of the key numbers. We've continued to buy properties. We've started selling homes, and this is in part because of the changes in the financial situation across the country. And we've welcomed 100 new tenants into Homes for Good properties, including 31 refugees from the Ukraine, and also refugees who have no recourse to public funding after having asylum seeker claims refused. We've also brought 12 empty homes back to life, and I want to show you a video about the Empty Homes programme that we have. This is a partnership that we have with Shelter Scotland, which is a homeless advocacy charity, and the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership. And I'll hopefully show you this video, which will be self-explanatory from my colleague, Barry. I'm trying to find it. Just give me 1 second. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to find it. It was lined up, but the video is not going to work. What I'll do is I'll add it in as a link to the PowerPoint and people can watch it afterwards. So I'll continue to share my original screen. This Barry's video showed a property that we had just taken over as an empty home from somebody who had the property empty for about 3 years due to water damage, and they didn't have the funding to repair the property. So we bought the property from them and turned it into this beautiful home. And 2 Bangladeshi students moved into this property last month. They were unable to access property in the private rented sector in Glasgow at a price that they could afford because of the pressures within the city just now. So we were delighted to help them make this their home. 2023 has been a real changing year for us. It's been a year of challenge and risk, but also some opportunity. And I think you can see here from the different things that we've been dealing with, the way that it's impacted on our business, but also more importantly, the way it's impacting on our tenants' lives. And we have a lot of different things to deal with that perhaps 5 or 6 years ago were not things that were at the front of our mind. One of the key things that we're dealing with is the cost of the money that we borrow and interest rates, which have increased all over the world. And in terms of the way that our investment model works and creation of the portfolio, the 3 factors that make the model work are the connection between the costs of buying and renovating property, being able to rent the properties at a level that are affordable, and then the cost of the investment and the interest that we have to pay. these factors and how they connect are what make or break the model. And we are absolutely committed to keeping rent levels affordable at Homes for Good, because that's our purpose, that's why we were created. And our financial model only works if the interest payable on the costs of the property is less than half of the rental income, and the model doesn't work in a higher house price, high interest rate environment. And this is our biggest challenge to date. But we love a challenge at Homes for Good. And so we've come up with a different way of thinking about how we provide homes and how we support the people who need them the very most. And this is the project that we're planning on getting off the ground this year before the end of 2023 with support from World Habitat. And what we want to do is create our own endowment fund where we raise capital grants to buy properties. Instead of investment that's repayable, we raise grants to buy our properties. And by raising £8.5 million, we will be able to create at least 100 homes for people who are homeless or who are in low income. And the rents will be, they will not be market rents, they will be rents that are wholly affordable. But the income from that rental income will enable us also to create sustainable long-term support for our existing tenants and the tenants that come as Homes for Good grows. So hopefully that has given you a sense of who we are. And thank you once again for the award. We are all absolutely delighted and we look forward to working with you all for many years to come.
Thank you, Susan. That was fantastic. And great to see some of those pictures. I feel sort of almost ashamed of my background of after seeing the quality of the stuff that you're renting out, and particularly I think, as so often what we hear about the private rented sector in Scotland and the rest of the UK is too expensive and is poor quality, and to have managed to achieve both of those I think is fantastic and really shows the way. I really wanted to bring on somebody with some more insight into this, and one of the partners that Susan mentioned, Big Issue Invest, Daniel Satter, who's the chief executive. I'm delighted he's joined us, and perhaps Daniel, you can give us a little more insight about Homes for Good and what you think is special about it.
Yeah, thank you. So, David, thank you so much for letting me be part of this panel. It's an honor to be here with Joseph Maturi, Baba Keita, and of course Susan Actimel, and all the participants around the world. When I'm with people in events like this, I never feel they're far away. We're all united by tackling the same causes wherever we are. So what a delight to be with people here today. So at Big Issue Invest, you can see behind me, these are some of the magazine covers for the Big Issue. The Big Issue is a magazine sold by street homeless people and other people in poverty here in the UK. And we've been doing that since 1991. The founders of the Big Issue knew just how hard it was to raise money for social enterprises like the Big Issue. So in 2005, we set up Big Issue Invest to raise money to invest in other charities and social enterprises. So we're currently looking after pushing £60 million worth of other people's money that we're investing in social enterprises and charities here in the UK. And Homes for Good is one of them. Susan is one of our biggest investees. 3.5 million has come from Big Issue Invest into Homes for Good, which if you live your life by numbers, you could say we're putting our money where our mouth is. This is one of the best projects around, and that's why we've put so much money into it. And David, I completely agree with you about the homes that Susan produces for people. I envy those places, and as an investor, I know I can never live in one of Homes for Good's properties. But that is the secret. What Susan and her team do is to create properties of a standard that they would want to live in themselves. There's nothing substandard about these properties. It's putting the very best into the hands of people who need it the most. And I absolutely love it. I love that impetus and that care that the team take to housing. So why a private sector housing solution? In the UK, we have 28 million homes, and we have more than 4 million homes in the private rented sector. And it's estimated around 14% of homes in the UK are substandard, not fit for human habitation. That's 600,000 homes not fit for human habitation. If we were to spend £100,000 each fixing up one of those homes to make it fit for human habitation, we need 62 billion pounds. 62 billion pounds. We're not going to get that from government in the way that things are currently structured. We're not going to get it from charitable donations at that scale in the way things are structured. So we need new approaches. We need the endowment fund that Susan is developing. We need other social investors like ourselves coming into this space. And we can look back into history. In the 1850s, the industrial dwelling corporations built homes for the new working class, people on low incomes in inner city areas, and they raised money at 4%, bonds at 4% to build those homes and house a new generation of workers. So that's what we have to reinvent today, and that's why we're backing Homes for Good. I love the actions government takes for housing. I love the actions philanthropy takes for housing. But we need to bring that scale of private sector investment through the private sector to transform the market. And I just love when you can see the smile on my face when I finish. It is that quality that is the main reason why we're investing in Homes for Good. It's what Susan brings to her tenants in the quality of the housing that she provides at an affordable price. So thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Daniel. That's fantastic, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Really great insight into the work of Homes for Good. I'd like to come to the last of our panelists, and definitely not least, long-term friend and partner of World Habitat on the awards, Christophe Lalande, who's head of the housing unit at UN Habitat. And Christophe has been a member of the World. We've got a number of questions which have come in, and thank you all for answering them as they come in. There's one I particularly wanted to put to how you think that people who are on this call at the moment, how do you think they may be able to help with what you're doing? And is there anything that you would like from them? Susan, can I come to you?
It would be too cheeky to ask for one single cheque for £8.5 million, wouldn't it? Because that would make my life quite easy in the run up to Christmas and into next year. But I'm sure that there isn't a cheque for £8.5 million on the call. What would help us? I think, obviously, we're about to launch on a fundraising programme. That's taken for granted. But actually, what would help us is everybody who's on this call talking to government and talking to local authorities, and making sure that they understand that the private sector can be a solution for homelessness. What we find in Scotland and in the UK, and I'm sure this is the same in other parts of Europe, the private rented sector is seen as a problem and sometimes the cause of homelessness, but actually by working and collaborating in a different way, the private rented sector can actually be a very flexible and high quality solution. So I think one of the things that we want to do at Homes for Good is lead by example. So it would be wonderful if people would follow our lead and spread the word and spread the model and give the inspiration that there are of the ideas that we have, and let people understand that it is possible to do what we do in other parts of the world.
Thank you. That's excellent, Susan. And I should say, I mean, there is a network of people who have won awards with World Habitat over many, many years, and I'm very, very grateful to have you join that, Susan. And I think that there's that can be a way in which good practice can be transferred around the world through those people, but also through the participants here. And I just think, you know, there's if people have heard things they think apply to their own to their own neighborhoods, to their own countries. I think, you know, we've got resources on the website, but we'll also be working with our winners to try and help transfer those projects to new places, and always keen to hear from people about how we might do that better. And so please contact us as well. And really go back to sort of Daniel's point earlier, which I thought was very well made, about the sheer scale of investment which is needed in the housing sector, not just to create the housing that we need, but to also to retrofit and upgrade the housing which is substandard that we've got. And just that sort of figure about what it would cost in, I think it was Scotland, was eye-watering. But actually what the private sector can do better. Daniel, I don't know whether you've got you can help about how people can do that better, and how we can help overcome that problem.
My 60 billion figure is UK wide and on the back of an envelope. So it could be a third of that, it could be twice that. But I think it's definitely saying a scale of money is needed out there that's beyond what we have at the moment. What gives me hope on that is that if it is about 60 billion pounds, that's the scale of private sector money from the city and banks and financial institutions that's gone into housing associations in the UK. So it's an achievable number. Now, it may have taken about 30 years to get to that number, and it took time for the private financial sector to get comfortable with investing in social housing, but it shows that it is possible. Investors like property. It's solid. It's a physical asset that generates revenue. So that gives me some hope in the asset. I do think we have to think quite long term, as Susan is thinking with the endowment proposition, for some of these solutions, because short term in a high interest rate climate and high inflation climate, the returns to investors, the returns investors are demanding are quite high. So I think we need very long term financial products. That 4% interest that I was referring to for the Housing Industrial Dwellings Corporation, those kinds of rates might just work for us. Above that, it starts getting a bit more difficult. So there's my kind of mixed thing. I want us to think long term. Governments and investors always find that a bit tricky, or sometimes find that a bit tricky, but infrastructure and history shows us that's possible. And the scale, I think, is achievable because it's a scale that the private sector is already supporting in terms of social housing. So that's my slightly optimistic take.
Well, we like optimism. Thank you, Daniel. Really helpful. Susan, there's a question which has come in, and I'm interested in your take. It's about the sort of management problems that you might have had, and I think, you know, you've shown how the quality of your homes, whether you do have management problems as well, and whether you can whether the quality of the homes actually makes any difference.
Yes, we do have lots of management problems, and what I would say is, when you give somebody a high quality home, it makes them feel different about themselves. It has to have an impact on the way they feel in their home. It's not a property that's minimum, that's got the minimum, you know, that's poor condition. They can see that somebody's put a lot of effort into the home, and it's furnished fully for them. And we always get asked the question, do people treat our homes better? And my answer is probably. We don't have a benchmark because the way that we furnish our homes is the benchmark. So we can't compare with what happens when people go into into empty shells, if you like. But we have problems with management, and I think that not every property that we have is beautiful today. We have properties where maybe the tenant has not let us go into the property to check if things are all right. There's properties that we've not been inside for a couple of years, and that could be for a whole number of different reasons. So getting the property to the point where it is in the photographs is just the start of it. There's then a very intensive management approach behind that, which is a combination of making sure that the property is always legally compliant, that it's safe, making sure that the tenants have got what they need from us, and that we pick up warning signs if the tenants are struggling with any aspect of their life and offer to help them. But also, with £20 million of investment and lots of investor interest to pay, we've got a big programme of work to keep on top of the management of the asset. We have to make sure that the property is physically in the best condition it can be at all times, because when somebody moves out, very quickly we need to make that a home for somebody moving in. So there's quite a complex management process that goes on behind the scenes. And while it's lovely to share the beautiful photographs of the before and after images, it's actually very, very hard work and quite regulated, serious programmes of work that have to go on behind the scenes.
Thank you, Susan. Really helpful. Christoph, something which we haven't really sort of explored much in this session is around sustainability. Susan was talking about the empty properties, reusing the empty properties, which, you know, has a huge saving of embodied carbon over demolishing those and rebuilding them. And I just wonder if you've got any reflections on that, because of, you know, of critical importance.
Of course, and it's a very interesting also component of the work. I would say that, I mean, in what we do, there is usually we look at the environmental sustainability of the housing stock. We know that this is really like something very important at the moment, particularly in the European region. There are many programs, many initiatives, but it's also like comes at cost. So I think it could echo also like the comments that Susan made in terms of, I mean, management and like the maintenance of apartments, I guess, comes at a cost. The fact of refurbishing like this flat also is kind of pricey, and we see, I mean, the opportunity of public subsidy and public support also like to be able like to really like make this transition, to make this housing more energy efficient, but also like to save the cost for the power bills for tenants, which is also like very important in terms of affordability. But we're also like very interested in like the cultural dimension of sustainable construction and buildings, and this also like should be like a consideration in this initiatives. I guess like the fact of providing a house that is like nicely furnished makes a difference, like Susan was mentioning. But I think like somehow the quality of the design, the quality of the architecture, considering also like the cultural background of like the community in which housing is being built, is also like very relevant. We have a specific tool that we have developed earlier this year together with UN Environment, another UN agency in charge of environment and climate change, and UNOPS. This tool is called like the Housing Value Assessment Methodology, and basically it is a sort of certificate quite similar to what we can find in like different type of housing markets for different type of certificates, but focusing on like low income housing and more affordable building constructions in like specific terrain. It could be like in post-disaster, post-conflict area. So context in which, you know, usually we do not have like very specific guidance about how to build, what to do in terms of sustainability, resilience. So this is an important element. But yeah, I think these two dimensions of environmental sustainability and cultural sustainability are very important, the way that we're looking at housing overall.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christoph. Really grateful to all of the speakers. I think it's been a really interesting discussion. Just an honor, really, to be working with projects which are doing such fantastic work in Scotland. As of much of the UK, not enough in social housing to meet the multiple housing needs, and so many people end up finding room in the private rented sector, and so often it is too expensive. It isn't the quality is not what can be expected. And I think what Homes for Good has done is shown that it doesn't have to be like that. That the private sector can be a good place, which can be affordable, which can provide good quality accommodation for people. And it's not impossible. It's difficult. It's not impossible. And I think the endowment fund, which Susan talked about, fantastic to see that a way in which it can be scaled up further. So whilst the world might be full of bad news, there's lots of really good news, and we've heard some of it today. And there's lots more out there as well. Look at the other projects which were awarded the different awards this year, and please keep in touch with us and keep them coming, because the awards just, I think, are the sort of center of what we do, and enable us to find these projects, share them with you, spread them out, and get more homes for people who need them. So I just wanted to say thank you also to all of the audience. Great to have so many people. Keep in touch with us. If you've got any projects which you would like to enter for the awards open again at the beginning of January for about 2 months. And also at the beginning of January, we'll be announcing the next award winners for 2024.